Chica Beach, Texas. And it's sunset, having a great time with my cousins. Cesar. And we're right over there. Over there is the Mexican border. That's where the Rio Grande dumps into the Gulf. And there's a whole bunch of people on the other side fishing with nets. And I bet they don't have permission slips. Now over there is South Padre Island. And you can see I thought I'd finish off this video with the narration because the wind is so crappy sounding. My mom was one of 13 siblings. She had 8 sisters. So Cesar's mom and my mom were sisters. We got to Boca Chica in the afternoon, and I do recall some pickup truck leaving as we were coming in. Found out just a couple of days later that there is another first cousin of ours related by another sister of my mom's and his mom's, who is living in Harlingen, Texas now. And it's very possible that that pickup truck that I saw leaving as we were entering Boca Chica could have been that cousin of ours. I'd like to say it's a small world, but I think it's a large family. What I like about Boca Chica is that it's pretty rogue out there. There's very few people there. I do recall about a year or 2, or maybe 3 years ago, I was in Boca Chica during Labor Day, and it really was packed. But one thing that I liked about it is you could have your dune buggies out there, which I got to ride somebody's dune buggy. I put my tent up there and spent the night. I rode my motorcycle in there. You can actually even take an RV out there, which we now have a small RV that I'm trying to talk my old man into putting out there so that we can have a nice little vacation. So Boca Chica has no lifeguards. Of course, it doesn't have any toilets or anything like that. So you just gotta find alternative ways to eliminate and void. But I was very surprised that there wasn't more of a border patrol presence there. Because a few years ago when I was there, I do recall there were Mexicans that were swimming across and running over, just jogging like exercising, all the way to South Padre Island and then running back and going back home. I particularly liked Boca Chica because there was hardly any police presence. I never saw any kind of enforcer except for one time, and during the maybe 4 or 5 hours that we spent there, maybe longer, we saw one border patrol truck just drive all the way down to the end of the beach and drove back. Now, to get out of Boca Chica, you do have to cross a little checkpoint, and that's another story for another day. But with my knowledge and my awakening of borders and everything, it just hits me as just how ludicrous it is that on one side of the border, people who want to go fishing have got to have their fishing licenses or be fined, which of course fining is really just a euphemism for extortion by the legalized mafia called government. But on the other side, they're all fishing, having a good time. Their trucks aren't as impressive, but they just have so much more freedom. Now, my cousin Cesar lives down there by the border, and actually, on his father's side, he has some relatives that live in Matamoros, which is the Mexican town on the other side of Brownsville. I actually had wanted to go to that part of the beach, especially since I knew my cousin was familiar with the area. But I changed my mind because things were a little bit different this time compared to past years when I had gone across the border. The biggest difference was that there were all kinds of Central Americans on the bridge on the Mexican side. Lots of them with families. They had little tents. They had bottles of, gallons of water that they were filling up from the Rio Grande. And my cousin doesn't want to believe it, but I was asking some of the locals there a few days later, found out that, yeah, a lot of them do fill up those gallons as drinking water. And I'm thinking, ew, but hell, they must have some heck of an immune system. So since that was my first time getting across the border, I allowed myself to get caught up in all of the propaganda about how dangerous things are. And even my cousin was telling me that if you're an expat living there, or if you're a tourist there, there have been reports of people getting kidnapped for ransom. And of course, it does make sense that there could be quite a bit of a drug cartel presence out there. But like Jeff Berwick has said in the past, He's a perpetual traveler from Canada and lives in Acapulco. He says that the Acapulco cartels are actually great protectors of the people, far more so than the government cops, which are really not to be taken so seriously because they don't even carry guns, unlike the federal cops who are very much in bed with the American, or should I say, with the USSA government cartels. Anywho, every time there's a setback, my one of my best friends, former activist, but we're still best friends, used to always say everything is either a bummer or an opportunity. So the fact that my car broke down and it was going to take a while to get the part for it to get fixed, and I ended up spending 5 extra days, and in that time I got into Nuevo Progreso, where a lot of people go to get their medications. And I was actually looking for a chiropractor to give me a good adjustment, but I couldn't find one. So the next best thing, I took the word of this little kid who, I tipped him a buck, and he showed me where there was a physical therapist. Now, she's in college, a Mexican college university out there in the state of Tamaulipas, getting her degree or her certificate or whatever for physical therapy. And I'll tell you, I've been walking crooked for the longest time, and I've had knee surgery because I've dumped my motorcycle like 4 times on my knee. And I've had surgery and whatnot. Well, this lady worked on me for about just a little bit over an hour. I told her my problem was with my neck. I had a lot of neck strain and that I had a bad knee, which, I kind of limp and I can't walk very far, which really sucks because I'm only 58 and I should be healthier. So she listened to all of my stuff and she was rubbing some cream on me and everything. And she was taught, and I asked her a lot of questions. And I now feel a lot more safe about going out there. And she says she works there and it's pretty close to the border. She works there. She's in her mid 20s. Never been married, short, really chubby little girl, very friendly. And she was telling me sometimes she works there until 10 o'clock at night and it's dark, and she walks home for like over a mile. And she says she's never felt unsafe. So had I had an opportunity to talk to her before I went to Boca Chica, I probably would have talked my cousin into, hey, let's go over to Matamoros because we were using his truck. And he was so gracious and such an awesome host that he says, hey, my wish is your command. Well, he didn't literally say that, but that's how I felt. And he so would have taken me to Matamoros, to that beach on the other side of Boca Chica. Now, getting back to that physical therapist, she worked me over, and I'll tell you what, I swear it felt like a miracle. I was able to walk perfectly. And I thought, okay, well, this is just gonna last me a little while. She had used some cream. I don't know what all was in it. She was telling me all the names of these herbs, and I just specifically asked her, "Is there any cannabis in there?" And she said, "No, no cannabis." And she like massaged my whole body, and I was as slick as a fish. And she was gonna clean it all off of me, and I said, "No, no, no, just leave that on there. And what do I care? Let it keep working its magic if there were some good herbs in there." So I had a really long walk back to the border. I had to cross that bridge where I saw all those Central Americans. And then I had to wait in line, the walking line, to get across the border. And that took a good hour, 45 minutes to an hour. I really wasn't timing it. And it may have been longer, but I was busy chit chatting with my cousin. So when your chit chat, time flies. We declared some booze. And when the Border Patrol guy asked me if he specifically asked, did you buy any medications? Now, I had bought a couple of bottles of Xanax because I can't get it here without a shrink eval. They've really tightened up on the Xanax out here, and I just when I had it back in the day, I had so much of it I used to pass it out like candy to anybody who had anxiety. But here I was out, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna get myself, a couple of bottles, and I found out you can have 3 bottles each. So I felt pretty confident about taking that across. Though, had I known, I probably would have taken my old prescription bottle just in case. So when the guy asked me, "Do you have any medications?" I just said, "Yeah, I did buy a few things, but mainly the main thing I have is some medication, itchy girl parts. And then I said, please don't make me give you more details. Well, technically, those weren't my itchy girl parts. They were for a friend, but not. That's not to say that I haven't ever had itchy girl parts because every girl has had itchy girl parts. But the point being that unnerved and rattled the guy so badly that he didn't even give me a chance to tell him that I had some Xanax on me. He just said, Who did you travel with?" Which was technically a sexist thing to ask because my he didn't ask my cousin that, right? And I just pointed to my cousin who had already gone ahead, and I says, "Oh, my cousin over there." By then, he already knew I was a U.S. citizen because I had given him my passport, and he kind of stuttered a little bit because they have three specific questions, and they are basically, "Do you have anything to declare? Are you a U.S. citizen?" And after going on and on about girl itchy parts, he stuttered a few times to ask me what the nature of my visit was. So I said, to get my teeth cleaned and whitened. And I smiled so that he could see how white and beautiful my teeth are. And I was free to re enter my tax farm. And by the way, my cousin wasn't much into teeth whitening, or he would have had a hookup for me on the other side. He had a hookup for a chiropractor. It just so happened that he wasn't there. So the first people that I asked, how much do you charge for a tooth cleaning, a teeth cleaning and a whitening, was going to be close to over $400. And then the second one ended up being quite a bit less than that. So if I recall correctly, for my teeth whitening, which usually costs about $1,000 in the United States, and for my teeth cleaning, which the last time I paid for a teeth cleaning was many years ago, and it was $250 because I didn't have insurance. Well, for both the cleaning and the teeth whitening, I paid about $140. So, yeah, it was a bummer that the fan on my car stopped, but what an opportunity to really delve in a little bit better inside of the other side of the border to find out that what lamestream media is saying is not 100% truthful, to say the least. I'll end this with a quote from one of my favorite new guys that I've been listening to. His name is Jordan Peterson. He preaches, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Mainstream media, which I call lamestream media, typically at least does not lie. But Lord have mercy, they do not ever hardly tell the truth. That's it. I'm Tiger Lily coming at you from Kerrville, Texas, where it's raining right now. But despite that, and despite the fact that I'm not living in my beautiful mountain home in Utah with a bunch of Jack Mormons, life is good. And P.S. Thank you, Cesar, for being such an awesome host during my time of need.